Now, I would like to call Mr. Jason Jones, President of the Uyghur Project.
Thank you. It's a privilege to stand here with you today, the governor in exile of East Turkistan, and all the distinguished speakers. President Gulam, it's a privilege to be here with you. Prime Minister Salih Hidayat. I founded my organization, the Vulnerable People Project, in 2002 to wage influence campaigns for vulnerable communities facing ethnic cleansing and genocide. And my confession is I founded it because as a veteran, I'm an Army veteran like Prime Minister Hidayat. As a young man, at my 17th birthday, I joined the Army. I was an infantryman. That experience impressed upon me that we were facing another century of total war, genocides, and democides. And I was worried about my posterity. I believe that your national anthem is one of the most beautiful national anthems, maybe the most beautiful national anthem, because it's mindful of your ancestors and thoughtful of your posterity. So as a young student in the university studying history and philosophy, and my thesis was on the Great Famine in China and the oppression of Chinese farmers and the tens of millions of people who died in the wake of that, I feared that my children and grandchildren would suffer as my grandparents and my wife, who is Chinese and her family fled China in 1949, thought my posterity would suffer the same. So when I founded my organization, it was for my posterity. I was thinking of my own grandchildren and great-grandchildren would one day suffer war and genocides and democides as my grandfather fought the Chinese in Korea and the Nazis in Europe. But one day that my children and grandchildren would have to fight wars. And in fact, my son fought ISIS in Syria and Iraq. But what I didn't anticipate was that in trying to stop wars and genocides on the other sides of the world so that I could protect my children and grandchildren and brothers, and my brother fought in Iraq, that I would become brothers with those that I serve. And that rather than keeping heartache at a distance, that I would bring it really close to home. I have to say that in the many, many years I've been friends with Salih Hidayat, not that I feel the oppression in the way that you feel it, but I feel it every day. In my long conversations with Prime Minister Hidayat, with the ups and the downs, with the hope and the despair, I feel it. But I want to commend the government in exile with the tremendous success that you have. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when Prime Minister Hidayat and I first walked the halls of Congress, it was heartbreaking to meet with members of Congress. And they would ask us, the Uyghur, who, what are you talking about? But today, the world knows. And that's because of your hard work. Several months ago, I don't think we should applaud you for that, for your hard work. Several months ago, I was at the Office Depot in my neighborhood. And I was printing out flyers for an event in support of American allies trapped in Afghanistan, our Afghan SIVs. And I was printing out the flyer. The young American boy, a young boy in Texas who was working behind the counter, looked up at me and said, I think this is good that you're doing this, standing with our allies in Afghanistan who are abandoned. But if you really want to do something, you need to go research the Uyghur genocide and stand with the Uyghur. 7 years ago, members of Congress didn't know who the Uyghur were. Today, in the German hill country of Texas, I have a 19-year-old boy working behind a counter at Home Depot telling me to Google the Uyghur genocide, and that is because of your hard work, and I congratulate you. When the great hero, Enes Kanter Freedom, shared his career with you, you know that, right? What an amazing human being. He gave his career in the NBA for you. That is a beautiful man. He's a man I greatly admire. When he laid his career on out for you to stand with the Uyghur people, and they kicked him out of the NBA. I said, well, you can't kick me out of the NBA. So we started buying the best seats at NBA games around the country. And we would smuggle in big banners that said, "Free the Uyghur." And then when there would be a penalty or foul right by us, right here at courtside, we would jump up with huge banners that said, "Free the Uyghur." And I have to confess, this gave me a lot of fear and anxiety, because people spent $5,000, $10,000 to sit right behind us. And here we are blocking the game with these huge banners. But do you know what happened? And Prime Minister Hidayat and I have been kicked out of, I can't buy tickets now on many websites. I've been banned. But Prime Minister Hidayat and I and some of you were at the game here in Washington, D.C., and we held up the banner, and we invited some prominent friends. We always invite prominent friends from the community to join us. And I just thought these folks are going to be really upset that we're blocking their game. And as the police came to escort us out of the stadium, the fans began to chant, "Free the Uyghur. Why is the truth heard? We stand with the Uyghur." And this empathy and support that you've knit together is because of your hard work. I want to share with you something that I'm Catholic, that St. John Paul the Great, a Polish Pope, and in many ways I think of the history of Poland in the 20th century is very similar to the history of East Turkistan in the 21st century. Is that powerful speech from the concentration camp survivor said that the future of the world runs through East Turkestan. In many ways, the future of the world in the 20th century ran through Iraq and it ran through Poland. And John Paul II, who was a young man, saw first the Nazis invade, and then the communists invade. He said even as a young man, as a seminary student, he knew that they wouldn't last long, that these totalitarian regimes would collapse under their own weight. Because in Catholic theology, we believe that God did not create evil, that evil exists because angels and man choose to disobey God, and the distance between our Creator and our choices, that is where evil is. And so regimes that are evil collapse under their own weight. And so Hitler's 1,000-year Reich lasted 13 years. The Soviet Union lasted less than 75 years. And in many ways, we see with the CCP a series of regimes. But this regime under Xi, in the past decade, he has knit together the most diabolical regime. And so we know, we don't hope, but we know that the CCP's days are numbered. But in the life of a man, in the life of a family, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years seems like eternity. But in the life of a nation, it's the blink of an eye. You're the government in exile, but you're the government of the people. And the CCP will not destroy the Uyghur people. So, the route out of tyranny. We know the CCP is going to collapse. But to paraphrase Winston Churchill, when the CCP collapses, that is not the beginning of the end for you, but it is the end of the beginning. Because the biggest challenges for you will be to rebuild and to knit together your government in exile and the march towards independence. But as a nation, you can begin that march now. And your national anthem, as I just read it for the first time as it was playing, offers you the way out. It's first of all piety towards our Creator, towards your parents, your family, your culture, and to remember the sacrifice of your ancestors. It is through family and marriage. You have experienced the genocide in the diaspora in a different way than your children will experience it. And your job is to preserve your children from the pain that you feel. It will echo through them. It will echo through your grandchildren. But you want them to be joyful. You want them to marry. You want them to have children. Because that is your future. Your posterity is your future. As your national anthem says this. And there's one thing that we know for certain. That the CCP will collapse. That there will be an East Turkestan. And the Uyghur people will be here for centuries and millennia when the CCP is just a note in a book. I want to say something that is always startling to me with my work. whether it's in Afghanistan. I'm here with my partner in Afghanistan, Prince Wafa, who is my hero. He snuck into Afghanistan after its collapse to rescue his wife. And after him and his wife came back home together, we distributed over 5 million meals to our widows and orphans of our Afghan allies, to religious minorities, and to the poorest of the poor. And he's my hero. But whether it's my work with the Uyghur, my work in Iraq with the Yazidi, or with serving Afghans, it's very interesting to me, the people who come together. And they are always Muslims, Christians, and Jews. When I was in Iraq, fighting for the Christians, I was standing next to Muslim Peshmerga boys who were giving their life for the Christians and the Yazidis. There are Jewish men here today that share their life with the Uyghur. And as all of us do, we don't want to encourage religious indifferentism. Our faiths are very important, and we have differences. And I do this spiritual exercise at night where I lie in bed and I think, okay, if Sally's right and I'm wrong, God, what do you want me to do? And I hear it very clearly. What I want you to do is serve widows and serve orphans. Stand against the violent. Stand with the vulnerable. This is what I want you to do. Okay, Lord, I got that. Lord, if my Jewish friends are right, then I am wrong. What do you want me to do? I hear it very clearly. I want you to stand with the widows and orphans. I want you to stand against the violent. And I want you to stand with the vulnerable. And as a Christian, my faith tells me the same thing. And so I know who the sons and daughters of Abraham are. They're those who stand with the vulnerable, stand up to the violent, who care for widows, and who care for orphans. But you have the practical work of independence. You have the responsibility of preserving your culture for your posterity. And my prayers will be with you. And I know you will succeed. And I know, and I tell this to Sally, I know if I take better care of myself, I sleep more, drink less coffee, I know that there will be a day that I am standing with you when you are the government of East Turkestan. God bless.